All right, so are you ready to dive into the world of performance art with us today?
I am ready. Let's do it.
We've got RoleCatcher's Guide all queued up, and they have some really interesting stuff to say.
Yeah, I thought I knew a bit about performance art, but this guide really digs deep.
That's our goal, right? To uncover those insights you wouldn't find on the surface.
Absolutely. And I think this deep dive is going to be eye-opening for anyone interested in this career path.
So let's not waste any time. You know how people always say performance art is about more than just performing?
Right. It's deeper than that.
Well, RoleCatcher breaks it down like this. They say it's really about crafting an experience.
Okay, I like that.
No.
And they go on to say it boils down to four key elements.
Oh, really? I'm curious now. What are those four elements?
Well, they lay it out pretty clearly. It's time-space, the artist's presence, and the relationship with the audience.
Those are really interesting, and I can already see how those would all play a part, but can you give me like a concrete example?
Sure. So imagine you're at a performance and the artist is using the whole room, like the walls, even the audience members, as part of the act.
Wow, okay, so that's manipulating the space to create the experience.
Exactly. And or they might do a really long performance, like something that unfolds over hours to play with everyone's sense of time.
It's like each of those elements adds a whole other layer of meaning to the performance.
Yes. And here's where I think RoleCatcher brings in a really important point about performance art as a career path.
Go on, I'm listening.
They say that it's incredibly flexible. You're not stuck in a box. You get to choose your medium, the setting, the length of the performance. It's really freeing.
That's both exciting and kind of terrifying, right?
Totally. You have all this freedom to create whatever you want, but then there's also that pressure to figure it all out on your own.
And that makes me think about the reality of making a living as a performance artist. Because it's not always the most stable career path, is it?
That's the big question, right? Like, how sustainable is it really?
Exactly. Because you could pour your heart and soul into this amazing performance, but if only a handful of people see it, how do you actually make a living?
And RoleCatcher actually addresses that head on. They have this whole section on the financial realities of performance art.
Okay, so they're not sugarcoating it. I like that.
Yeah.
What kind of things do they say?
Well, they don't beat around the bush. They straight up say that the median income for performance artists is around $30,000 a year.
Wow. Okay, so we're not exactly talking about a get-rich-quick scheme here.
No, definitely not.
Hmm.
It's more about being resourceful, finding creative ways to supplement your income, and really being passionate about your art.
It's like they're telling aspiring performance artists to be realistic about the challenges, but to also not give up on their dream.
Exactly. And they even talk about how online platforms are changing the game, like Patreon, where artists can connect with their fans and get direct support.
That's so interesting how things are changing. And I think it's really responsible of RoleCatcher to present both sides of the coin, the creative freedom and the financial realities.
I agree. They're not just painting a rosy picture. They're giving you the full picture.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, but let's talk about the skills you need to succeed as a performance artist, because obviously talent is important, but what else are we talking about?
Well, one thing that RoleCatcher emphasizes is the importance of communication skills. And it might seem surprising at first, but it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah, because you're not just up there performing in isolation, right? You're collaborating with other people, trying to get your ideas across.
Yeah, exactly. You need to be able to talk to other artists, technicians, potential funders, people who might want to give you a space to perform, and you need to be able to articulate your vision clearly.
So it's not just about being a great performer, but also a great communicator.
Exactly. And you know how sometimes artists are stereotyped as being these solitary creatures?
Yeah, like they're off in their own world creating.
Well, RoleCatcher's research actually found that a whopping 84% of performance artists consider collaboration to be essential to their creative process.
Wow, 84%. That's huge. So not only do you need great communication skills for the business side of things, but also for the creative process itself.
Absolutely. And this is where things get really interesting because on top of communication and creative talent, the guide also digs into the technical skills that are becoming increasingly important for performance artists.
Ooh, are we talking about technology here? Because I'm really curious to hear how things like virtual reality are being incorporated into performance art.
You read my mind. That's exactly where I was going with this.
So before we jump into all of that tech stuff, what exactly are we talking about when we say a technical foundation for performance art?
You might be surprised to hear this, but RoleCatcher found that 84% of performance artists say a strong foundation in fine arts is essential.
Wait, 84%? That's the same number who said collaboration is key. You're saying that knowing your art history and theory is just as important as being able to work well with others.
It's super important, and RoleCatcher really emphasizes that They actually share a really cool example of an artist who used forced perspective in their performance.
Oh, I love forced perspective. I've seen photos where people use it to make it look like they're holding up the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
Exactly. It's a really cool technique. And this artist drew inspiration from Renaissance painting techniques that use forced perspective
Right.
to create this mind-bending visual illusion.
Okay, that is really cool. So it's like by having this deep knowledge of art history and theory, it actually allows you to be more creative and innovative in your work.
Exactly. You have this whole other well of inspiration to draw from. It's like having a secret language you can use to communicate your ideas.
I love that analogy. Okay, so we've got communication skills, artistic knowledge, and now we're layering on technology. Let's get into it. You mentioned virtual reality earlier. What's the big deal with VR and performance art?
Well, performance art is all about creating these immersive experiences, right? And VR takes that to a whole other level because now you can actually step inside of the art.
Okay, I can see how that would be really powerful. But are performance artists actually using this stuff?
They definitely are.
Yeah.
And RoleCatcher highlights some amazing examples, like this one artist who created this underwater VR experience.
What do you mean an underwater VR experience?
So the audience puts on these VR headsets, and they're suddenly surrounded by these incredibly realistic projections of marine life.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I bet it feels so real.
It's supposed to be incredibly immersive.
Hmm.
And that's just one example. The guide also talks about augmented reality, projection mapping, and even artificial intelligence.
It's like all these digital tools are blurring the lines between the real world and the digital world.
Exactly. And it's opening up all these new possibilities for performance artists.
Okay, so we have all these incredible new tools, but how does a performance artist even know where to start with all of this new technology?
That's where RoleCatcher's own AI-powered platform comes in handy.
Oh, really? Tell me more.
So their platform is designed to help artists at all different stages of their careers.
Mhm.
And one of the things it does is connect them with opportunities that require these tech skills we've been talking about.
So, like, instead of just seeing a general call for performance artists, you might see a listing specifically for a VR performance artist.
Exactly. It's about connecting artists with the opportunities that are the best fit for their skills.
Hmm.
It goes beyond just job listings, too.
Oh, how so?
Their AI can actually analyze an artist's portfolio, their online presence, even their application materials.
Wow, that's really cool. And I bet that kind of feedback is super helpful.
It's like having a digital mentor in your back pocket. And for more experienced performance artists who want to start incorporating these technologies into their work, RoleCatcher offers workshops and resources to help them.
So they really have thought of everything. It's amazing to see how technology is being used to support artists in such a real and practical way. Okay, so we've talked about the skills you need and how technology is playing a role, but RoleCatcher also lays out these different career stages for performance artists. What can you tell us about that? So when you picture a typical career path in performance art, what are some of those stages that RoleCatcher outlines?
Well, they're really careful to say that there's no one right way to do it, but they do give a general framework for how a career might go. And at the entry level, they say it's all about getting experience.
So like an internship or apprenticeship kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. They actually highlight how many performance artists start out by assisting more established artists.
So what kind of stuff would you be doing at that stage? Like setting up for performances?
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
behind the scenes work, setting up installations, maybe even managing the audience during a performance.
Interesting. So you might not be the one in the spotlight, but you're still a crucial part of the performance.
Right. And you're learning by watching how the more experienced artists approach their work.
It's all about soaking it all in.
Exactly. And then as you start to gain more experience and make connections, you might find yourself collaborating on bigger projects, maybe even leading a team.
That makes sense. Because now you're not just responsible for your own performance anymore.
Exactly. You're managing budgets, applying for grants, coordinating with other artists. That's where those leadership skills come into play.
And of course, all those communication skills we were talking about before.
Exactly. You need to be able to get your ideas across clearly and effectively, whether you're pitching a project to a funder or just brainstorming with your team.
So it sounds like to really make it as a performance artist, you need to be both a creative visionary and a savvy business person.
Absolutely. You need to be able to wear a lot of different hats.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the senior level. What does that look like for a performance artist?
Yeah. Is it all about fame and fortune at that point?
Well, I don't think fame and fortune are ever guaranteed in this field.
That's probably true for most art forms.
But RoleCatcher says that senior level artists often take on more mentorship roles. They might curate exhibitions or teach or even publish books and articles about performance art.
So it becomes less about being in the spotlight yourself and more about giving back to the community and shaping the future of the art form.
Exactly. And a lot of senior artists continue to create their own work, but they also use their platform to elevate other voices and perspectives.
It's like they've reached this point in their career where they can really give back and help to shape the direction of the field.
Exactly. And it's inspiring to see how these artists are using their platform to make a difference.
It really has been an incredible journey exploring the world of performance art with you today. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is that this field is so much more than just getting up on stage and performing.
Absolutely. It's about
Mhm.
pushing boundaries, experimenting with new ideas, and finding creative ways to connect with your audience.
And as technology continues to evolve, I'm excited to see how performance artists will continue to incorporate these new tools into their work.
Me too. It's an exciting time to be a performance artist.
It really is. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive on performance art. We hope you enjoyed this exploration of this unique and evolving art form. As always, keep those imaginations running wild, and we'll see you next time.